everybody, and welcome to the Level 30 Games podcast. My name is Tom. I'm here with Joe today. We got a very focused podcast for you. Today is all about Zelda, Ocarina of Time. No, I'm just kidding. It's about Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past. Joe?
I'm Joe. Everybody knows me because I'm the only constant.
There's a boo on your shirt. I just saw that.
Boo on my
I
shirt.
like that. Cool.
Yeah.
We're here today to talk a little bit about a game that you may have heard of. Came out just recently. It's called Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. And so far, it's pretty damn awesome.
That's such a depressing title.
You know...
I mean, I know it's a depressing game and a depressing series, but, like, the whole kingdom is crying.
So we wanted to spend an episode focused on this game. And I have a feeling, Joe, and maybe I'm different. This is a game that's going to occupy pretty much my Switch playtime from now until, like, probably the end of summer, whenever I end up finishing this game. And I feel like it's going to be one of those, like, hey, it's middle of July and I just beat it. And now I can play something else and have that weird moment where, like, you come out of a cave and you're blinded by light and you're like, oh, what do I do now? Because I just spent all this time dwelling in a cave.
Yeah, and nothing else is going to live up to this, too. Like, my eyes aren't ready to handle anything else, like the blinding sun.
Well, it was a weird transition, and I'll get into this a little bit later, but I was playing Octopath Traveler 2, which I give a very strong recommendation to. And that game, along with, I think the only other game that I had this experience with was Persona 5, where it became, I mean, it's such a long game. And if you played Persona 5, I mean, like, the main storyline in Persona 5 is probably 100 to 110 hours. Like, there's no way to make that shorter. It's just, that's the story.
Good God.
Yeah. And it was excellent. It's probably one of the best games I've ever played. I'm actually playing it. I was playing it again, second time through for Royal on Switch. And then I tapered off to play Octopath. But that was one of those games where, like, it became such a habitual, okay, I'm done dinner, I'm going to play a little before bed, that, like, when it was done, like, I felt out of place because I was just so used to having it be part of my daily routine. And then Octopath took up that mantle because, I got to the end of all the individual 8-character quests, and I'm probably right under the 90-hour mark, only to find that, because my goal was, all right, I got to beat Octopath before Tears of the Kingdom comes out, and I didn't. And then I took a day off of work, and I was like, all right, I got to beat Octopath today so I can really get into Zelda and just spend all day playing Zelda. And then I realized there's all this other side quest stuff to get an ending for Octopath, because once you beat all the individual stories, like, the game still goes. Like, it's not like, hey, here's an ending, roll credits, but if you want the real ending, here's more. It's just like, no, okay, go do this other stuff now. And I was like, no, I gotta stop for the time being. So 90 hours, there's still probably another 10 or 12 left. It's a great game, recommend it. But I know, like, I'm itching. I was playing before you showed up to record this podcast because I wanted to have some fresh things to talk about. I'm not far into the game. You're a lot farther than I am, right?
Yes, but I'm also not that far in, like, overall.
So these are going to be the worst impressions of a game that we barely scratched the surface with, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's if you talk about Breath of the Wild too, though, like, it's a game that you can go in and just beat whenever. And, like, this one's a little bit different. There is story. Like, I guess I could run to the castle and fight Ganon or something right now, but I don't think I can. But, like,
well, they did say someone beat it in, like, 97 minutes or something, like, the day after the game came out, which can't even fathom how that's possible.
I mean, somebody beat the first one in 3.
Okay.
That's the record.
But
after changing the language to German.
Well, the Germans speak faster, so it cuts down on cutscene time. That's the secret right there. I can understand someone doing that now after having, like, fully played the game, maybe the right way, or having enough information about it to, like, figure out where you can cut corners and stuff. This was a game that just came out that there's no guides for yet. Like, everything online is like, oh, incomplete, we're trying. And then this person's just like, all right, I'm going to get to the boss and win somehow. That's insane.
Can you imagine, though, like, you wait 6 years for a game, you spend $70 on it, and your first experience, like, that first magical moment with the game is you running through it in 96 minutes just to get to the end of it, just for, I'm going to use a word I don't know if I've ever actually used before, just for some internet clout?
I couldn't possibly imagine that. I wouldn't want to, but I guess maybe they really find joy in that. I don't know. right? Because figure speedrunning as a community, it's all built on the last person to hit that record, right? So he's the first person to hit that record.
Yeah.
And that name will float out there until someone else beats it by a fraction of a second. And then
It'll be
you
lost in time very quickly.
build on that. Sure. But like that's what that community is all about. I'm just not part of that community. And we're not really here to talk about speedrunning.
That's fair. I'm sorry. Move on.
No, that's quite okay. That's quite okay. I know we scratched the surface, and we're going to try and keep this spoiler free. I don't personally think I've come across anything that would even warrant spoilers at this point, because everything that I've seen, I've either like, oh, I remember this from Breath of the Wild, or like, oh, this was in the trailer footage, or this was something that like we knew they were going to do to set up the game. I'm still in the opening tutorial section. Mm-hmm. I think you've touched down in Hyrule.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm a ways behind you, but still have some interesting things to say. So I kind of wanted to backpedal a little, like pre-release. What did you have like a mindset heading into this game prior to it coming out?
I think I knew that to some extent, like I was going to enjoy the game because it's a Zelda game. Like there are very few of them that I don't like, and realistically, the only one I can think of offhand is Phantom Hourglass, and that's just I think it's more because I picked it up recently and tried playing it and was like, who came up with the idea that I would walk by like touching the touchscreen, like by just moving the pen on the touchscreen? I'm stupid.
The DS, yes.
Yeah. Anyway, regardless, I knew I was going to enjoy the game. I didn't really, I don't know, I didn't have concerns other than the fact that I was afraid that I was going to overhype it for myself because like this looks awesome, and it sounds like they're listening to what people want in the regards to like more enemies and more stories and dungeons and things like that. So I didn't want to overhype it because realistically, any game gets overhyped for yourself because you look at the trailers and you're like, oh, look at all these cool things that go on, and then you start the game and you're like, oh yeah, I have actually like play it.
Yeah, get there first.
Yeah, like
Right.
these things happen as I'm getting through the game. It's not a movie, it's a game, and I'm not gonna like it. It's not 100% action game where I'm just constantly dodging. But it took me a couple of minutes for it to like sink in that like this is not Breath of the Wild. It is Breath of the Wild 2, and it's a direct sequel, which means it's gonna be new, but it's just gonna be bigger Breath of the Wild. You know, it's not a whole new like series and a whole new game. So you have to kind of like set your expectations based off of that once you start the game, because you go in, you're like, oh, this is gonna be so cool, and you're like, wait a minute, I'm just playing Breath of the Wild again. Like I already know how to play, and I've only been playing for 10 minutes, and then you're like, oh, that's the point of it. Like, that's why I'm here, because I want to do this again. So I didn't have the kind of concerns that you had going into it. I was very excited and more just didn't want to overhype myself for things that, like, not that Nintendo would let me down, but, like, for things that, like, literally can't happen. Like, am I setting unrealistic expectations for a video game in general? So far, I'm not far enough to make that call, but I am seeing Nintendo listening to a lot of things that people were asking for out of the first one, and I'm excited about that.
I am as well now, and I did have some pre-release concerns because I think if I needed to be honest with myself, I don't think I agreed. I'm hesitant to say this. Okay. I don't think I agreed with the belief that Breath of the Wild is the greatest. I won't even say greatest game, the greatest Zelda game of all time. I enjoyed it, and I liked it, and I put well over 100 hours into it. But I have an issue with open world games in just that I consider myself a filmmaker. I like traditional narrative experiences. So having to go and carve my own path was something that I don't necessarily prefer in video games. Give me. I'm not saying give me linear levels, but like give me
Direction.
Give me story structure. And the story element of Breath of the Wild, I think, was one of the weakest parts of the game. Like, I can forgive the lack of traditional dungeons or item gatekeeping where it's like, oh, you can go there, but you need the hook shot and you have to go here first. Like, that element of Zelda, I was perfectly fine with. I think I liked Zelda more for some of the lore, but also just the puzzle solving. I think I feel like I heard someone say this, and they articulated it really well. So I don't know who to credit, but this is not an original thought. Zelda as a whole, and I think Breath of the Wild did a really good job of this at times, and I'm hearing Tears of the Kingdom does an even better job of this. Zelda, they do a great job of giving you a puzzle or environmental element to solve and making you feel as if you are the first person to ever figure out how to do it. And that's always been something where when you're stuck or you realize, hey, I needed to go to this room and hit this thing so I can get a chest and get a key, and that gets me into the next room of the dungeon. Those were elements of Zelda that I really liked. I was a little concerned heading into this game knowing that, Breath of the Wild was good, but it's the only Zelda game that I have a hard time going back to play again because of its scope. I just feel like it doesn't render itself to replays. I think it just renders itself to additional playing time. And once I've beaten that game, I don't really feel a need to go putz around or do anything in Hyrule that doesn't serve a purpose. And so, and this was an issue I had with 3D Zelda games as a whole, because some of their stories got really long-winded. And while it is nice to know that if I wanted to boot up Link to the Past, I can probably beat it in, a day, you can't do that anymore with Zelda games. And time is a little bit more of a resource that we don't have as much of. To say, hey, this game's going to take you 100 some hours. Oh, that's great. I might not see the end of it.
Yeah, where am I going to find 100 something hours?
Right.
Says the person who put 260 something into Breath of the Wild.
And good for you. I hit like 100 or I think like 95 when I finally beat Ganon. And then here's DLC. And I'm like, all right, cool. And I put in another 20. And that's nothing to sneeze at. It sounds like 20 is low. But when you're talking about hours, no, that's a day.
Yeah.
Right? And realistically, it could have taken me a month to play those 20 hours.
Yeah.
So more of that I was a little anxious about, because time being a factor and knowing that, okay, I was a little unfulfilled from Breath of the Wild. This might be something that if it is more of the same amplified, that sounds great on the surface. But is that something that's going to have enough legs to get me intrigued into finishing and completing this game because I'm compelled to do so? And that was a worry. However, within the first hour, I was like, okay, I think I'm good. I think this is good. I think the game does a great job of starting off on the right foot. I feel like we got more cinematic story elements in the opening of this game than we did collectively in Breath of the Wild. It felt like a meaningful start to the game.
Absolutely. The opening cinematics are not long, but they're a little lengthy.
But you can tell it's setting up something larger for the world, as opposed to the previous game where it's truly, it's basically the start of every Zelda game, right? Hey, Link, wake the fuck up. You sleepy motherfucker. Because he's always asleep, right?
Yeah.
Go adventure. And the whole point of Breath of the Wild was to I wake up and then there's just a world, right? And that's it. That's all the story set up.
Yeah.
By intent. Because you're going to figure out that story as you go. Now we have that world in a sequel, and now we have events that we can reference historically, which felt, it was delicately done, and I would even argue really smart how they incorporated some traditional Zelda elements in Breath of the Wild, just little nods to things, which was really cool. But this game really feels like, hey, you have a previous experience to base this off of that does some of the heavy lifting tonally and just kind of setting the story up for something as a reference point. Breath of the Wild, there was no reference point other than it's Zelda, and there's going to be little cheeky nods to other Zeldas of throughout time. Okay, that's cool. This one feels a little bit more robust in the narrative department, and that was immediate right out of the gate.
Yeah, definitely. That opening cutscene where the whatever his name is, the weird zombie thing, turns his head to you and really wakes up,
which we saw in the trailer, so it's not
not a spoiler.
Yeah,
so metal. It's so cool. It was fun to watch, and I know a lot of that stuff that we saw there was in that whole a lot of that opening cinematic was the trailer, but I watched it with the controller in my hands this time, ready to play,
right?
And it made a difference. It was so cool.
Yes, and they did a lot, personality wise with the characters as well. Zelda was kind of adorable, in that opening, her excitement of what she was discovering and finding. I'm
yeah.
You know what, good for you, girl. It was kind of a really cool, just, we're so used to seeing her as the princess, right? That one needs saving, and two is like very regal and kind of understated, and that's pretty much it. Skyward Sword did a good job of giving her character personality, but like that continues here, and it was really cool to see that. I'm not quite sure what happened to her.
I mean, we don't know yet. Like we don't know yet.
Well, there's obviously some things that are alluded to.
Yes.
Yeah, we're trying to avoid the spoiler part here.
But again, realistically, like from where I'm at in the game, like I haven't gotten to the point where like I know what happened to her for real or anything.
Okay, so then we can have some healthy speculation. But it stands to reason that like she's taken to another time period. It seems like.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. Or if not another, it actually seems like she might have been taken to the past.
Okay, or the future. Yeah, either one of those two things.
Yeah, it is hard to say. Some sort of other dimension, I guess.
Dimension or timeline.
Timeline would still be a different dimension in a way. I don't actually know what I'm talking about.
You know what? Either does anyone that knows anything about the Zelda timeline. No one knows what they're talking about. It's all
gonna get Pikachu. You know what? Nintendo doesn't know what they're talking about.
No, they made that whole thing up.
Yeah, because I very vaguely remember them releasing the timeline.
Yeah, it's in that book.
And then people like immediately were like, but that doesn't make sense because this happened here and that happened then. And Nintendo was like, that Homer gif where he just
just goes back into the bushes.
Just gone.
No, it was a good framework of a timeline, and there are some things like, oh, that makes sense. And there's so who knows? We don't know where she is. If you played the game further than we have, maybe you do. So we're just guessing. There's no.
I bet that person who beat it in 96 minutes has no idea.
That's probably true. He probably just spammed through all the cutscenes and got to the other end. But it does a really great job of setting up the game, and I'm hoping that there are more involved story elements like that, because the memories from the Breath of the Wild I didn't really care for. Like I was hunting them down because I wanted to hunt them down and get context to why I was doing certain things, and I'm hoping this game provides that a little bit more forcefully. Like I don't want, like I don't know how it does it in this game. Is it the same? Do I have to like go to an area and all of a sudden the screen's going to fade to black and I'm like, oh, I triggered a cutscene because there's something here? So yeah, I think it does a very good job of opening this up and telling you, hey, there's a lot more meat here than there was in the first one.
I was going to say, if we were about to switch topics, can we touch on how the game runs?
We'll get there. Let's get there.
All right.
Maybe not right now.
Okay.
Because I'm still in that, like, I had anxiety about this game. I really did.
I know. We had talked about that on previous podcasts.
Yes. And several friends throughout the week were like, well, did you play it yet? And I'm like, no. And they're like, dude. And I'm like, I know. And I like had
Someone
like this
may have threatened your family.
Yeah, you know. That, they're safe, by the way.
The things friends do, you know.
Yes. No, I was really concerned. Like I was anxious in playing this because if it wasn't good or I didn't like it, I was really afraid of just not liking it. And so far, so good. I've got a couple of the powers unlocked, and they're fairly intuitive, if not a little clunky control-wise. Like, it seems like it's going to be fun. I just also am, like, seeing already, I'm not trying to avoid social media, but it's like, I got to find this video. I'll show it to you. It's amazing. Some guy was like, yeah, he built, like, a full-on, like, drone chopper that just, like, auto-fired lasers, missiles, and fire. And, like, he just, like, I mean, it was like, I'm like, holy shit. I don't know how long he took to do that, but I'm like, I'm going to glue a piece of wood to this hook, and that'll get me over. Okay, cool. He's sitting here, I'm not spending an hour building a tank to, like, mow down some bokoblins and then get, like, a rupee. Like, that's like an afternoon. That doesn't sound like fun to me.
There's a part where there's two gears, and they're, like, the piece that connects them. I'm not an engineer. Well, I am an engineer, but not that kind. The piece that connects the two gears is not there, so you have to figure out how to connect them so they turn together. And I, like, grabbed a giant icicle and put it between them, and it worked. And I didn't see any other way to do it, so that might have been the right way. But I looked at it, and I'm like, I'm a genius. I can't believe I did that.
Well, right, and that goes back, to the heart of Zelda, making you feel like, oh, no one has done it this way before. I'm the first one to do it, and it worked.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a really great feeling when something like that happens, especially sometimes when it happens by dumb luck. We're like, well, I don't, sure, let's put a bicycle in between two gears that you would think would just grind it to,
yeah, it would just break
a snow cone. Nope, it's fine. That icicle held up. That's great.
Some say it's still there to this day.
It's still grinding away. Those gears are working out well. Now that anxiety's gone, I can finally get into this to a way that makes me feel more like, man, I love Zelda. Like, this is my favorite video game franchise of all time. A Link to the Past is my favorite Zelda game of all time. And I probably would put Breath of the Wild near the top 3. I'm hesitant to even be in the top 3.
I'd say it's a better game than it is a Zelda game. Breath of the Wild. But I enjoyed it. I think its place in the hierarchy, like the list.
The tier list?
Yes, the tier.
There you go. The tier list of the kingdom.
I think its place in that list is very much contextual. Like, it's how good of a game it is very much depends on, like, the fact that it was, a lot of people's, like, first experience with the Switch.
True.
Their first big experience with the Switch. Like, if somebody in 15 years were to take a whole bunch of Zelda games and play them, they're not going to like A Link to the Past as much because they're going to be like, well, this is older. It's, there's...
Blasphemy.
Yeah, but they're going to be like, there's a lot of, like, quality of life features that aren't there, things like that. They're going to play Breath of the Wild and be like, yeah, that was fine, but, like, Tears of the Kingdom had X, Y, Z, A, B, C that, like, were never in Breath of the Wild. It's a good game. I loved the game. I put 260-something hours into it. Loved the game. A lot of that feeling of how good it's going to be is going to come from the context of it, though, of where it came out in the Zelda timeline, where you were when you played it.
And that's actually one thing I think I can share. It shares with great films in some regards. Like, there are a lot of movies that I walk out of or I'll see and I go, oh my God, that was amazing. Like, overwhelmingly emotionally invested, beautiful pieces of art. And I'll say to myself, I'm never going to watch that again. Like, I don't want to see that movie again. Right? For one reason or another. It's just like, oh, you know what? It's a rainy Sunday. Life is great. Well, let me throw in Schindler's List. Like, no, that's not a film that, like, I want to watch in my free time for obvious reasons. But, like, as a piece of art and storytelling and cinema, it's amazing. It doesn't mean that I'm going to want to watch it all the time, right?
No, for sure. So, I don't know, Zelda means a lot to me. It was one of my first video games. I think I definitely talked about this on an episode before, because Link's Awakening was, like, my first Zelda game, but also, like, one of my first video games in general. So I think when we were discussing when they did the remake, like, how excited I was.
You did a review for that.
I did.
I think it was, like, the only review you ever did.
No, I did for Symphonia as well.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
But God, I loved that game so much. I loved the remake of it so much. It's just, I don't know, it's an important game for me because I kind of, like, I don't know, I got into it, like, naturally rather than it being like, Zelda's a big game. Like, I don't remember anyone buying the game for me. I just remember that I owned it, and I remember putting a lot of time into it and not getting very far because I was, like, 8 and somehow worse at video games than I am now. But it's also, like, it's been a constant. So as new consoles come out, there will be a Zelda, new Nintendo ones come out, there will be a Zelda game, and I will play it. Mm-hmm. And as I, like, grew up and talked to other people that play video games, like, 90-something% of the time we could talk about Zelda games. So it was really that game that, like, told me, like, hey, you like adventure games. Like, these are the kinds of things that you like. It also, I'm not a big fan of like, high fantasy. I like it occasionally.
It's sort of high. I mean, it's not. It's fantasy.
I don't know. I considered it high fantasy, but I could be wrong because I'm not too much.
I mean, it's not Lord
of
the Rings. But
it's not. It's definitely not. And Lord of the Rings is one of those things that, like, yeah, I'm familiar with it. I can enjoy it in, like, small chunks, but I'm by no means do I, like, care a whole lot about it. But it's one of the few, like, it still has some pretty in-depth fantasy, even if it's the same story over and over again. Like, you still get some pretty silly names here and there that you gotta remember.
Sure.
And, there's the ever-evolving map of Hyrule. But I'm with the fantasy that I do like, I'm very, very picky. The same thing with sci-fi, but regardless, I think that's why it also is more special to me, because, like, I'm very picky with my fantasy, but, like, this is something that I enjoy, and I don't have to like make myself like Zelda. Like it's not like oh, a new Zelda game is coming out. Like it's a fine game, but it's Zelda, so I'm gonna like it. Like I'm definitely gonna buy it. Like it's genuine excitement. Like the game is still good. Nintendo is not like phoned it in on Zelda games and been like, well, we're just gonna put the game out because people are gonna buy it. Like we're gonna get the $60 for it. Like
$70 now.
you know, is it a nostalgia thing? Absolutely. Is it strictly nostalgia? Not at all. In fact, one interesting thing I'll say about this game, about Zelda, specifically like going through Tears of the Kingdom, but within the last like handful of years, like I really stepped off of multiplayer games. Like
Okay.
they were really big when I was like senior in high school and the first few years of college. Like there were times where me and my friends were hanging out and we literally went back to our homes so that we could play games together.
Oh, that's sad.
You know, it really is. But like couch co-op on Halo was not as good as having your own full screen. So
Disagree, but go on.
well, it depends. So, but either way, like I played a lot of multiplayer games, and there were times where I was looking for games that were like strictly multiplayer, so I could go online and play. And then the last like 5, possibly more years now, I've had no interest in multiplayer games. Like it's all single player. I don't want to be beholden to other people. Like I want to be able to quit this game when I want. I want to be able to start this game when I want. I don't want to rely on other people. Like me and a couple friends have played some. We played like It Takes Two together, but that's a lot easier because you can coordinate with one other person. Just be like, hey, we're gonna play for 2 hours, and that's all the time I have. There's something about getting into Zelda, like specifically like right now, getting into Tears of the Kingdom and playing it and how special it's been, that it's like, I don't think a multiplayer Zelda would work, at least not in like the adventure context right now, but I want to experience this with somebody. Like I'm talking to everybody and being like, have you played it yet? What do you think of it? Have you gotten to this point? Like, even if I'm not that far into the game enough to be like, this is the best game I've ever played, I'm really interested in experiencing it with other people. And I'm like, I haven't wanted to play like a true multiplayer game in years, but like, I do want to do this with somebody else, and that's something kind of special.
Yeah, I think that was something that Breath of the Wild did, maybe inadvertently, or I don't know if that was part of the design, right? Because it was a new hardware, and the Switch did have a sharing option and a recording option where you can like, you know, oh, I want to save the last 30 seconds of gameplay. Cool. I mean, how many times did we see, here's a 30-second video of someone doing something really cool in Zelda, and it was very different from the thing that I did in that same exact moment, right? So like there is a social component to this game if you kind of go out of your way to get tapped into it, right? Whether that's like a Zelda subreddit or just, you know, follow any video game people or journalists on social media, or, you know, I mean, geez, YouTube, you can't search Zelda now without coming up like 8,000 things, like, and then refresh, and then you'll find new things, right? So like there is a social component. It may not be directly like, hey, we're playing the game together, which admittedly would actually be kind of cool. Like, hey, you're Link and I'm Zelda, and I'm gonna follow you up this mountain, and like we're gonna, like, that could be a cool thing. I don't know if the Switch hardware can do that. It might implode in on itself.
We can discuss that whenever we get to how the game runs.
Ah, yes. But there is definitely a social thing to this. It's just not as directly social in the multiplayer aspect of it, right? But I think that's one of the things that I think makes this mean something to me as my favorite game series, is that Zelda releases are still events. Like those are still things where like when it's on the calendar, and not saying like the world shuts down for it. It seems to be a game series that has gotten more popular, especially after Breath of the Wild, and is now become something where it's like, we're all playing this at the same time. And there's something kind of cool about that, you know, and I think there are very few games that still do that, right? Especially within an existing IP. Like there can be hype around a new series or new game that comes out, and then, you know, depending on how well it does and how big that community gets and planned sequels, et cetera, can lead that to being something bigger. But this is an established franchise of almost 40 years now. And the hype around this game and personal excitement and conversations with people, students, it's just, it's really cool to be a part of. And I'm hard pressed to find a game that does it as well, let alone that I'm interested in. Like there are games that are coming out like in the near future. Like I think I just saw the first kind of sneak peek at, hey, well, we're hinting at Grand Theft Auto 6. And that's a game that'll sell 80 trillion copies. And I'm sure that launch day is going to be huge. So cool. Like there are things that are similar, but for me personally, it's Zelda. It's great. It's an event. It's a thing. I look forward to it every time. Even though I've had really bad luck with Zelda launches. It's just, I've been cursed.
And that's next on the rundown, so get into that.
Thank you. That was a really very transparent segue you did there.
Look, we have to keep order.
Order and chaos.
We are adults. We are level 30 adults, and we need a schedule so that we can plan our naps around it.
So I have a troubled history with Zelda launches, and this has happened now the last three. No, not last three. So it happened with Tears of the Kingdom, it happened with Breath of the Wild, and it happened with Twilight Princess. Skyward Sword? I think I might have been okay. No, I think it happened with Skyward Sword too. I'll have to look at the release date of that.
Which Skyward Sword?
The Wii version.
Okay.
The original one. Because I remember driving home with it, and I got the $100 version that had the gold Wiimote.
I got that too.
Yep.
Don't know how I afforded that working at Radio Shack at the time.
I think I was working at Best Buy at the time. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Zelda launch day, I just want to come home and play it immediately, right? That's the only thing I've been waiting for. And so all four of these games have had something that have made that impossible. I'll move quickly because there's a lot of... So Twilight Princess, of course, was the first Zelda game to come out on the launch day of the Wii system. The Wii was one of those systems where, if you recall, I mean, hype for this was through the chain. This was the, hey, this system isn't for gamers. This is for everyone. Your grandparents are trying to pre-order this system on top of every hardcore gamer in the world. So I worked at a video game store that doesn't exist anymore, and I was able to get a pre-order in on the first wave of system. That's how we were doing it. Hey, we're getting 5 at launch, and 5 in 2 weeks. We were basically yeah, we're calendaring in when we're getting our units in. So I pre-order on the first wave, pre-ordered Twilight Princess. I was like, yes, awesome. I can't wait to pick this up, go home and play. This was when I was in college, and I was taking an elective class. It was a camping class. I took a camping class. So it was like a 2-credit physical gym kind of class, but we didn't have projects or anything. We had field trips. We went camping, right? So there were 3 camping events that happened over the semester, one of which was the night before the Wii system launch. And so I remember driving to this camp or starting point, this trailhead at 3 a.m, and we hiked all day. And as soon as the sun went down, we had already set up our tents and stuff. We had dinner. All right, we're going to go to bed. And I was like, all right, I've been up all day, and I'm still losing sleep because I'm excited knowing that when I wake up tomorrow, I'm going to get to play Zelda. So we wake up, and we do our thing, and we hike out. It was I think a 4 or 5 mile hike out. I don't remember how long. It was long. And I had a cell phone, I think, but it was in the car. I don't know. Anyway, we're driving home, and we're an hour away from Philadelphia, and my boss had called and left a message and was like, hey, listen, you got to pick this thing up because people want it, and we should not have any in our inventory by the end of the day. They won't give us more if you pick this up. If you're not here, I'm gonna sell it to the first person that walks in. And I was like, oh my God. So I made it just in time, but I didn't have that all right, it's midnight, I'm going home, I'm gonna set up this system and play it. So that was a bummer. Skyward Sword, I came home with the system. It was a family party or something, and I was like, no, I just want to play this game. No, you have relatives here, you can't play it. So I had to wait until the next day. These are total first world problems, but yeah. I didn't have that moment, right? Breath of the Wild, I picked up the system at midnight the day before doing a 24-hour film challenge, where I was then from midnight up for 36 hours straight working on a short film. The Nintendo Switch and Breath of the Wild was literally sitting boxed in the Best Buy bag, in the corner of my home. And I'm just sitting there I don't want to do anything other than play that, but I want to make this film, which won some awards. So that was cool. But I was and then I had family here that were helping out. So
slight flex.
So the next morning they were like, all right, well, we're going to leave around 3. Maybe you want to catch a train after breakfast so I can go home and set up this system and play Zelda, because everyone is playing it right now and I'm not. And it happened again with Tears of the Kingdom. All right, it's coming out on a Friday. Oh my God, that's beautiful. I can pick it up maybe on midnight the night before. Maybe I'll take the day off and make a long weekend of just nothing but Zelda. And I'm a class advisor for the seniors, and our senior trip fell on Friday, May 12th. So I woke up at 4:30 in the morning to get to the school by 5:30 so that I can be in a bus by 6:30. Meanwhile, like Kevin, who I think took the day off to play Zelda all day, is like, "Oh man, this game's great." And I'm like, "Dude, I'm on a bus with like 80 seniors right now. I won't be able to play until tomorrow when I go pick up the game." And then here was the Sophie's Choice that came about. Because I was up so early, I had the game pre-ordered at GameStop. I was going to pick it up Saturday morning. They early Friday, some retailers were like, "Hey, we've got collector's editions. Do you like buy it?" And I was like, "Oh, yes, absolutely, I'm in." So of course, add to cart, go to checkout. It was only store pickup, but for like Thursday the 20th or something. Like it was a week after, and I was like, "Oh my God." Okay, so what I want the collector's edition. Am I buying this game twice so I can play it? Like I'm like, do I want to spend $200 to have both of these things? But I was like, okay, so that was a silver lining. But now I have to wait this whole weekend that I was going to play the game until Monday when I know I wouldn't be able to play it. So I've had a rough history with Zelda launches. My anxiety this time around didn't help. Sorry, that was a very long-winded tale. But needless to say, when the next Zelda game comes out, I will be busy. I don't think I've gotten any clothes yet in the game. Oh, no, I got pants. He's still shirtless.
Yeah, you'll be shirtless for a little while.
All right. Well, I'm probably going to scan some Amiibo and try and get some cool armor sets.
Not a bad move.
Yeah.
One of my friends texted me before I even got to play, and she's like, "It took me 3 hours to find a shirt." And it's like, oh, this should be fun.
Yeah. Did you see the Link? No, what's the Link's Awakening outfit?
No.
Oh yeah.
That's exciting.
It's like his full wardrobe, but then also a mask that looks like the chibi face from the remake. It's pretty kind of creepy, actually.
That's cool though. I like that they're throwing stuff like that in the game because it probably takes them like all of an hour to design that outfit and drop it into the game. So
hey, it took them 2 hours. Yeah, I think a lot of the unlocks of the Amiibo are like you get fruit and like a paraglider skin that's from this game, and you're like, ah, cool. I'll see that in 2-second bursts when I jump off a mountain.
The first dungeon requires you to stay warm, and you really don't have enough gear to like keep up on that. So I will take free fruit.
Yeah, get those hot peppers.
Yeah. Before you get to the first dungeon, make sure you have a ton of hot peppers.
Well,
I'll
that's
say that.
where I am currently still in the tutorial area, is that they're like, hey, it's cold here. You probably should eat some food. And I was like, cool, I can make some food. Which, by the way, is made all the more adorable because now Link hums Zelda tunes.
I love that.
The first time I heard, I'm like, wait, was that a Pona's song? What? It was awesome. It's now I'm like, I do not want to skip this cooking animation. I mean, I probably will after the 8,000th time, but I thought that was like a really nice little touch there.
Just watch him like lean back and forth. And
yeah, he's so proud of his little work.
yeah. Meanwhile, he's not actually doing anything. The food's just
jumping
itself.
on its own.
Yeah.
Well, there's your high fantasy. It's a high fantasy cooking pot.
So I wasn't wrong.
You were not wrong.
There we go.
You're also being guided around by a goat ghost because Rauru looks like a goat.
I don't know why I really like his voice actor.
He sounded familiar. I'm gonna have to look up who he is.
Along with voice acting, though, I will say this though: some of the writing is not top notch.
I haven't come across any yet. There's definitely that. I mean, so far in the limited dialogue that I've seen, there's definitely that Zelda level of like self-awareness, kind of not campiness, but like there's definitely like they take some things really seriously and then they just don't in other situations, and there's this weird balance of like, oh my god, there's this demonic being that's gonna kill me, or a Lionel that will like just literally rip my heart out. Oh, but like here's a guy that like is playing with a dog, and like he doesn't serve a purpose. He just like
He's just there.
likes to throw stuff for the dog, and you're like, oh, okay, that's cool. Like there's a good balance there. I don't know.
It's a fun like series in general because it does have that like a very serious storyline and a very very angry, scary looking ultimate like antagonist, and then just some like really goofy things. Again, like Link, singing along with the music, or like just with old Zelda songs when he's cooking food. Like
just Beetle. His existence is just weird. So you wanted to talk a little bit about some of the technical things. Performance.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you first how it's running for you when you play, because you've been. I haven't really played more than a couple of minutes handheld. I've been like almost pretty much exclusively playing on my TV, and you said you've been. Have you played handheld at all?
I haven't with Zelda. No.
Okay, all right.
But I will, because so I have some issues with the controls. Like, I know it's early on, but like I'm seemingly haven't pressed the right button frequently for things. And I'm like, oh, I want to use my powers. I'm going to hit R. Nope, they're on L. Why am I instinctively hitting R?
Every time.
Yeah, right? Or like, oh, I got to switch weapons, and so I hit a shoulder button. No, that's not it either.
Yeah, I don't know why I keep doing that too, considering it wasn't the shoulder buttons on Breath of the Wild.
Right, yeah.
Just can't get used to it.
And then I'm panicking, like trying to find a weapon sometimes, but instead of like going to the weapon screen, like I'm calling my horse that I don't have access to yet, and I'm like, oh, cool, I'm going to die while whistling for a horse that's never going to come because I'm miles in the sky. So unless it's friggin' Pegasus, then
that would be pretty incredible if the horse showed up there, though.
Yes, I've got a quarter of a heart left, and instead of selecting a stone axe, I'm calling a horse that just pierces through the enemy with its Pegasus horn. Yeah, no, it's not perfect yet. I have a feeling there will be some muscle memory that gets baked in after a few hours of gameplay. It does an okay job of explaining some things, but I also have this tendency to be like, oh, you gave me a description, but I just hit next because I wanted to keep going, and now I don't know what it said. So, like...
During dialogue, though, you have that log button.
Yes, no, dialogue, that's
nice.
fine, but, you know, I can read that, not a problem. But when it told me how to, like, fuse stuff to arrows, like, it briefly told me how to unfuse it, and I don't know if I know how to do that. So, like... it's a little cumbersome in the menu when you go to fuse stuff to arrows. You have to like hold the button and then scroll. And like I've accidentally fused like steak to an arrow, and I'm like, well, what the f am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah, I did that with a bundle of sticks before. It's like this serves no purpose.
I just turned one arrow into 5 arrows. I'm like, all right, great. So I'm going to shoot something that replenishes health at this enemy. I don't want to do that either. So like, all right, so now I don't even know what I did with it. I think I shot it at the ground and picked them up separately because I couldn't figure out how to unfuse them.
I'm pretty sure you go back to the menu and just scroll all the way to the left and select nothing.
Yeah. Oh, that's the other thing I keep doing. I keep hitting a button to bring up that menu and not the start button or the plus button. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. I think that's just because Octopath, the menu is X and start doesn't do anything. Mm-hmm. But for how many times you actually frequent it, you think it would be a more primary button.
Yeah. It feels weird hitting pause to go to the menu because, like, to go to an active menu because that feels more like a pause menu button kind of thing.
Right.
But instead I'm going to, like, my main menu that does all of the things that I need in the game. It's the button layout's strange, and it almost feels like an accessibility problem that you can't customize it more.
Yeah, I don't...
Like, you can only flip X and B.
Which I did.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I thought it was weird to hit X to jump.
It is weird, but running and then jumping is difficult for me when you flip it.
No, because you run with X, and then you can just, like, shimmy your hand down. It's kind of like when you, like, Super Nintendo. I'm going to run with Mario, and one was Y, and you can, like, just kind of hit the second button with the thumb. You didn't have to, like, lift it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I might try. I feel like... See, I switched it at first because I felt like I had it switched in Breath of the Wild, but... it's been working for me, so...
Okay. And well, maybe when I get more stamina, I'll find that holding X to run is more of a pain in the butt, but I feel like I've been jumping a little bit more, so I have that set to be. No, accessibility is probably not great on this game.
Yeah.
But from a performance standpoint, I haven't noticed any major issues as far as frame rate dips or anything yet. I did have a moment where I was playing before we started, and... I'm like in the snow area of the tutorial, and I guess I came up this hill where the sun was behind me, and I don't know if it was like, I don't know if the game does HDR, but it was literally like so bright that I'm like, everything's white. Like not everything, but like 80% of my TV was white. I'm like, this needs to move quickly. Like I had to move the camera in order to see where I was going. So, no, I haven't had any major performance issues, but I think I'm in a very limited area right now, so I haven't come across big chunks of enemies. Other than some trees, there's not too much going on.
Yeah.
I made an argument to Mike the other day. I said, you know what? I don't know how I feel about how this looks graphically. It doesn't look as nice as I remember Breath of the Wild looking.
That may change when you get down on the ground.
Okay.
Because it's just the color palettes are limited when you're
There's a lot of yellows.
Yeah. So it's limited in the area that you're in now, and realistically like a somewhat decent amount of like fog between the areas, between like the individual islands, which is gonna kill some performance.
Apparently that's a dynamic procedural cloud system.
Still gonna kill performance though.
Yeah, I just thought it was cool that they actually have that. So it might be slightly random, which means it could be different performance-wise.
True, but I guess what I'm saying is that like because that exists, there's going to be even less variation in what you're seeing when you're up in the sky.
That's true.
When you get down to the ground, you've got
everything.
Yeah, you've literally infinite plane.
And I'm sure that's by design, right? The tutorial should be very focused. So don't get distracted with all this stuff. Just kind of go with this loosely constructed plan that we want you to do, kind of.
Yeah, and there's less ecosystem variation too because
that's
you're up in the sky.
Right.
So not to say it's the most beautiful game in the world, but when it makes a difference when you get down to the ground.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not saying, oh, this game's ugly. I love the art direction more than anything.
Yeah.
But I guess wasn't impressed initially. But
You'll definitely.
It's already taken a back seat as I'm trying to figure out how to all right, I gotta go kill this dude and run into that cave, but I can't run out of the food that makes me safer from the cold. You kind of forget about it pretty quickly.
Yeah,
which is nice
for sure.
So no performance issues for me. Have you stumbled across any?
The occasional frame rate drop for a couple of seconds. There's definitely a difference between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, and that could be because Breath of the Wild was technically a port to the Switch, and Tears of the Kingdom was built for the Switch, so it was known it was going to run better. But also now that the system's been out for a while, they know how to utilize it better.
True.
Like any console, it happens. The later games always look better and run better. It's by no means is it flawless, but it's not hindering the game in any way. So far, I haven't hit anything like the woods, where the game just basically ceases to run. It's
no, it was never that bad.
But it's embarrassing. Nah. It's not great. You can feel it here. Instead, every once in a while, you'll feel it dip for a couple of seconds, but the game doesn't lock. It just you feel it stutter for a second or two. The only part that I wasn't a problem, but the only part where it was consistent was the boss fight at the end of the first dungeon, and that's because you are.
Don't spoil anything.
You spend a lot of time in the air.
Oh boy.
And it's snowing.
Oh boy.
And there's a big ass boss coming your way.
Okay.
And you're fighting it. So there's a lot going on. And for what's going on, it's playable. You're still staying at your 30 frames per second. It's just you can feel it drop from 60 to 30.
It doesn't run at 60. It runs at 30 frames a second.
Then does it just look that pretty?
Yeah.
Well, the human eye can only see 30 frames.
Stop it. No.
No. Then you can feel it dip to from 30 to probably 24 or something like that. It's completely playable. It doesn't get in the way of the game, but you can feel it. And then when the battle's over, you're like, wow, this is 400 frames per second because it just feels so much better when it's consistent. So yeah, you feel it kind of stutter a little bit during that section, but again, doesn't get in the way of the game. It's overall been a much smoother experience performance-wise than Breath of the Wild was.
Yeah, I watched a Digital Foundry review yesterday. Well, I didn't watch it. I listened to it because I didn't want to see anything that would have been spoilers. And they were saying it's fairly consistent at 30. Using your Ultra Hand ability will cause it to dip initially. I think because there are some particle effects or something on the ground that kind of highlights or something, so it will dip there. But they said really smart in how it does resolution scaling. So basically every time you move the camera, the resolution may dip to say 720p as opposed to I think the targeted 900p. But you don't notice that because the camera's moving, so it kind of adds this pseudo motion blur, not look, but the resolution changes when you move.
You can see it a little bit in darker areas.
Sure.
That there's some dragging, or some ghosting, But again, not bad, and it kind of works because you're in a cave anyway.
Sure. Yeah, they actually said the worst parts graphically were some of the cutscenes because I guess the compression in the pre-rendered cutscenes was not super great, so you do get a lot of like blocky textures and
I didn't really notice them that much.
I mean, and again, this is when they're like, and if we zoom in here 400%, you'll notice that this dark area is actually 3 lightly dark areas. You're like, okay,
Gotcha.
cool. Like that shot is held for a second. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
see it. But no, they performance wise, they said across the board, it's really solid. Like especially given the hardware age.
Not even the hardware age, just the hardware was pretty low powered to begin with. Like even when the Switch came out, like
True.
it wasn't made to be the most powerful console. So the fact that they're like that it's lasting this long and they're able to still get this kind of performance out of it is actually like a pretty decent technical feat. It's very impressive.
Well, I really want them to make it last as long as possible, seeing as how I just bought the Switch, the Zelda OLED, and I didn't need it per se, but I kind of wanted it. So yeah, if they didn't release a successor in the next year, that would be great because I just spent $400 to buy a system that I already own.
Yeah, a system that you already own that's how many years old too?
Well, no, and mine was in perfect cosmetic shape and everything. The battery, I gotta stop doing that. The battery life on it was like I would play like, oh, let me just play this like indie game, and the battery would be dead in like 40 minutes.
That's depressing. I can replace it for you.
Yes, had you offered that to me prior to me pre-ordering,
Had I known that was the problem, I would have offered it to you.
Oh.
I'm offended that you didn't ask me first.
Any lingering thoughts on Tears?
Lingering thoughts. I want to go home and play more.
All right.
That's kind of it. I'm not super far into it. I'm excited to play it.
It's a hard game to play in small chunks.
It is.
Like I think I remember playing Breath of the Wild when I finally had time to sit down over that weekend. I think I played for like 6 hours straight on Saturday and on Sunday. And like not because I had nothing better to do, but it was because how you progress, like how you make progress in the game it's not short. You know what I mean? Like it takes time to do something. So like I feel like I've been doling it out in such small chunks that it's not that it's not satisfying. It's actually making the itch to play even stronger. But like I do want to sit down and like I want to play for 4 hours and get to a meaningful point and go, oh my God, that's amazing. And there's so much more. I feel like I've been chipping away at it so slowly that it's not underwhelming, but like, no, I just need to sit down and play this for like a whole day.
Yeah. The lead up to the first dungeon is actually like a pretty long area, and it actually took me 2 days to do because I just don't have that time to do it. But like the next day I picked it up and I'm like, I don't remember which direction I was going, but like, yeah, some of the sections are that like it took me 2 days just to get from where you're headed to the first dungeon to the first dungeon. That was a 2-day thing for me.
Yeah, I've played, truthfully, maybe 2 hours. Yeah, maybe between 2 and 3 hours. And I've only gotten 2 of the 4 power-ups so far.
You don't get them all right away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, you don't get them all right away because I only have like 4 of them, I think.
We have to stop so we can go play.
Yeah,
well,
we
they
do.
say like, oh, these are the new power-ups, right? They went through that. They did that whole presentation of these are the things you can do. And then I didn't actually think about it until just now. But when you get to a certain point in the opening area, they're like, oh, you got to go find these other, shrines, right? And there's only 3 of them. So like, what are they not giving you out of the gate? I don't know. You know, because you got there. Don't tell me.
Da-na-na-na.
Sweet.
Let me ask one more question.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about the Zonai in replace of the Guardians?
Much more interesting.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, from a lore standpoint, because you have someone kind of guiding you, and they are Zonai, and then they have these mechanical Zonai that are like
Or I guess the constructs, right?
the constructs. Yeah,
that's
they're like neutral, right? Like they give you information, so there are some that are placed, and you're like, oh, you're here to just give me a little bit of tutorial information, and that's cool. But then you have other ones that are like, hey, you're a threat. We're going to attack you. But I've also snuck up on some that were busy attacking, like choo-choos or whatever the little jelly things are, right? So like they see me and they're like, "Hey, get out of here!" And then like little things pop out of the ground and they're like, "Oh!" They start whacking them, and I'm like, "Cool, I'm gonna go and now I'm gonna attack you." So like they're neutral there. Like I'm kind of impeding on their land. So like, I almost feel bad. Like, oh, I don't want to have to destroy you, but you're gonna drop some things I probably need in my inventory.
I like them. I dislike the idea that like I don't know if there are going to be guardians later in the game. They might show up. I dislike the idea that like we're just going to forget about guardians and now we have we've got constructs here instead. I don't like that. It kind of seems like Nintendo is like, well, we have something better. We're just
retconning
gonna,
their story.
Yeah, we're gonna take these out and put these in its place. But overall, yeah, way more interesting.
I am
characters
curious.
and enemies. They're fun.
Yeah, I'm curious now. Like when you get to Hyrule, I'm trying to think of how Breath of the Wild ended. Wait,
I mean, they've
are we
got
talking about the same thing?
yeah, the big guys with the legs.
Oh no, I was talking about the. Oh, I was thinking about the champions. I'm sorry.
Why would I compare the champions?
No. My mind went to champions
Gotcha.
when you
Yeah,
said guardians.
Sorry,
Okay.
no, the big purple guys as opposed to having the constructs. Like we ditched the guardians and now we seem to have constructs instead.
I'll be fine with it. We'll see if I have PTSD from like I can still hear the music of a guardian approaching, and I'm like oh shit.
And then that beeping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when you get to that one part in Breath of the Wild, you're like, oh, there's a chest all the way back here. And then there's like 9 lasers on you. And you're like, oh God. And you're just doing like clever sailing and then like dropping for a split second to let.
Yep.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
And then you put the controller away. Fuck it, I'm dead.
Yep. All for a tunic, worth it. Yeah, so we're both basically itching to play Zelda. And I'll end kind of on this last question, even though it's a loaded one. What happens next? One, does this game render Breath of the Wild obsolete? Like, can we go back and go, oh man, I can't wait to play through this again? And then you like realize you can't fuse 2 sticks to make a bigger stick. And you're like, well, not as much fun. What happens? Are 2D Zeldas dead? Or are we like going to be just forever living in this new Zelda formula? And does Nintendo, I think this is a very strong possibility, do they complete a trilogy? Like, is this the Breath of the Wild trilogy, and then we move on to something else? I don't know. I really couldn't fathom. And I know I played 2 hours of the game. I'm not like already going like, man, I can't wait to see what they do next. But like, I'm curious what they would even consider at this point.
I don't even have thoughts on any of these questions, let alone answers. Like, 2D Zeldas could be dead. I feel like that's a separate market, so they might keep doing them. But the Switch is like the console now, so Nintendo might look at it like, what's the point? Like, we used to do like 3D ones on your home console and then 2D ones on your handhelds, but now that they're the same console, what do we do?
So you tell me that if they took the Link's Awakening remake art style and said brand new Zelda adventure, and we're just using that art style, some of those assets, different world, everything's different, you'd be like, nah, I'm good. It's not Breath of the Wild.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying I would purchase it before they have mass produced it.
Oh, okay. So what you're saying is there's still hope we can get the Oracle of Seasons and Ages remastered.
Hope is both an understatement and an overstatement.
Gotcha. Okay.
Getting that would be more of like, I don't know, the Holy Grail, the ultimate pipe dream. Like, I would love that. And I know this kind of goes against what I was saying before of like, I don't buy it just because it's Zelda, but like, I know it will be good and I would love to, like, I would fund that.
All right. Well, you heard it here first, Nintendo. Crowdsource your next 2D Zelda game because Joe will foot the bill.
I will. I would absolutely love to have that as like in the style of the new Link's Awakening. Would absolutely love to have those. But yeah, I don't know. Like, will they do a third one?
I don't know why it feels like they would, because they don't really do sequels too often.
No, not really. So I can't see a third one happening. They might do one that's in like they might do another like.
But that could be exactly why there would be a third one, because they have never done one.
You could say that at any time.
Well, you could say that anytime, but you can't really. You can say it after, well, there was Zelda, Legend of Zelda, then there was Link 2. And if you want to make an argument that Majora's Mask is a sequel, it is. It is. I didn't care for it too much, but it is a sequel.
Yeah, it is.
This is the only other time there's been a sequel. So you can't really say that, oh, after Zelda game, we're going to get 2 more. Oh, I don't know. But how about Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks? Are they sequels? I never finished those games.
Are they? I thought they were like 2 offshoots of Wind Waker.
I don't know. I should know. We'll consult the official Zelda timeline. It will tell us nothing, and then we'll just forget all about it.
You also have a Phantom Hourglass poster behind you.
Yeah, so I don't know where they go. I do get a feeling that they would do a third one. And I
could
bet
see
it would
it happening.
offer some level of co-op. That would be my just guess. Don't know why.
Like somebody takes the other Wiimote and swings it around the screen, and they can pick up star pieces.
Yeah, that's all they can do. They can't actually do anything else. But it probably would coincide with all right, we're going to announce this game, and it's going to be a launch title for the next hardware.
I can 100% see that happening if it's the third one. Like, do you think they'd put all 3 Zelda games on the same console before the end of its lifetime?
Knowing Nintendo, not only would they do exactly that, they would then immediately release new hardware and not make it backwards compatible. That's the Nintendo way, because it doesn't make any sense.
I'm hurt because that's true.
No, that won't happen. No, I'm not even. I got to finish this story to figure out where it could potentially go from here. Well, that's going to do it for our little journey through our Zelda experiences and some Tears of the Kingdom insights and perspectives. I hope you enjoyed. No funny game to end the show today because I couldn't come up with a good one, and we're definitely long on time. So, well, thank you, Joe, for taking the time to be here to record this episode. And
Thank you for having me.
I look forward to doing another one with you in the near future. Hopefully we'll have another guest with us to liven the conversation. Everyone, enjoy your weekends. Go save Zelda and the land of Hyrule. We'll see you in the next episode.
Big.